됐다. 됐다. 캠파챗이
in order to access a lot of these passives. And so we decided that we really want these burning synergies to really be benefiting builds that are dedicated to burning type builds, and not just ones who are splashing it in with a Firebolt enchantment. And so with that in mind, we did a rework on the enchantment to increase the
이게 번역이 되나 바로?
remove the burning damage from the enchantment and change it over to this, which has a healing component to it. And then we also updated a lot of those burning passives to really play better in the dedicated fire-based builds, rather than being something that you just want to splash into everything.
무슨 말인지 전혀 못 알아먹을
There's a lot
것
more build
같은데.
variety.
Absolutely. Yeah, that is one of the main driving goals of a lot of our updates is increasing that build variety, so you don't feel like you have to take this checklist of mandatory things before moving on to what you actually want for your build. So an example here on Devouring Blaze, you've got bonus. Previously, it was bonus critical strike damage against burning enemies, no matter how much they're burning for. So you just apply that little bit of burning, and you would get this. Now instead, you get a bigger bonus, but it's just for your pyromancy critical strike skills. So it really encourages, hey, you're a fireball build, you're a meteor build, something that wants to do those big fire crits. Devouring Blaze now is more valuable for those builds, and it's not something that you necessarily need to or feel compelled to splash in other builds. All right, on to the next one. We also did some updates for Ball Lightning. So Ball Lightning, the previous upgrades, like kind of these Mage's Ball Lightning and Wizard's Ball Lightning, were about stunning enemies or spawning some crackling energy with admittedly some kind of complex conditions. You had to jump through a lot of hoops to get these. One of the things we really like to do with a lot of these updates is simplify them down and streamline and really focus in on what the interesting factor is.
Yeah, it makes it a little bit more modular too, right? So there's more builds, the less sort of focused that initial step is on that skill.
Absolutely. So we've got the Mage's Ball Lightning here that now is just increasing its damage against stun enemies. It's really that payoff for a lot of the lightning stun effects. And then Wizard's Ball Lightning is just always going to be generating more cracked energy, just more consistent generation there. All right, on to the next one. We've got some of the new uniques that we want to show off here on the Sork, talking about Ball Lightning. So this is actually something interesting we're doing this season, where we're making two uniques that are in the same slot. And they're going to modify the skill in a different way. So they will be mutually exclusive. So you can take either this one here, which turns Ball Lightning into a kind of like a bowling ball, really. You send it forward, it goes pretty fast, and when it hits a target, it's going to explode and kind of splash outward. And I think this is really cool. It offers a switched up play style to the way you're familiar with Ball Lightning, which was kind of slow moving forward, or if you pick the other unique, you can actually retain the old gravitational aspect. So we can go on and take a look at that one here in the next clip. Right, so a lot of the Ball Lightning builds in the past were using the gravitational aspect that caused it to rotate around you, and we've updated that and kind of reworked the gravitational aspect so that now that functionality is built into this new unique and also has some additional bonuses. To encourage this kind of play style. And obviously the gravitational aspect that used to do this has been reworked into a new cool effect that you'll be able to demo out on the PTR as well.
This is like a fun trade-off now and sort of how you want to use Ball Lightning.
Yeah, it really helps it be a bit more build defining, which is our goal for a lot of the uniques is hey, you get this unique and it feels like it's very foundational to your build. One thing I do want to call out here is the inherent affix on this, right up near the top, that Ball Lightning can be cast while moving. This makes it a lot smoother to just be moving around and just keep on clicking that ball lightning, and you're not going to have to like stop like that, very short half-second stop to cast it. It just feels much smoother, and this is one that this build is just wants to be on the move,
Right.
and that encourages that. All right, so let's talk about the Druid next. So this one, Druid is this season a lot of werewolf updates. Season of the Werewolf. I absolutely love werewolf builds, and I think they've been, maybe a little bit behind the rest of builds over the course of Diablo's history. And so this season, a lot of our updates are really focused on building, making that build come up to par.
Yeah, like pure werewolf, right? Not
Pure
like
werewolf.
mixing it with other things.
Yeah, a lot of times you saw some like rapid shape-shifting builds, and those are fun. Those are great, but pure werewolf wasn't quite hitting the mark, and so that's what a lot of our focus is. Let's take a look at some of these updates. So we've got updates to Shred, the main core skill for these werewolf builds. Previously, the Raging Shred upgrade was just a combo attack that applied some poisoning damage. So now it's going to still do that and apply a lot more poisoning damage, but it's also going to cause them to take even more poisoning damage for the next 5 seconds. So this is, your kind of finishing move on your combo or your core combo, but then it also enhances all of the other poisoning damage that you've applied through something like Rabies. All right, we've got updates to Boulder. Now this isn't necessarily with the werewolf theme, but still Boulder is a skill we saw a good opportunity to improve on it. We had 2 upgrades on Boulder in the past, the 2 choices, and they were both fairly similar. They both dealt with critical strike chance or critical strike damage, and we thought that was an opportunity to rework one of them to give it a different identity. And basically the identity was Poison Boulder. Like just a giant ball of poison.
Yeah.
What does that look like, or what does that do?
Changing the damage type always helps sort of branch out and make it feel really different.
Yeah, and we got some really sweet visuals for it too. I'm not sure if we have a video on that. I think we'll just have to rely on that in the PTR.
Yeah. People will see it on the PTR, but yeah, it's got some cool visuals associated with it.
Yeah, and so that one will be very cool. Definitely check that one out.
This one I'm very excited about because Bloodhowl, as we see, has always just generated spirit, but now.
Yeah, it was always just generating some spirit, but you still do that, but now it gives you even more increased damage until you shapeshift out of werewolf form. So going back to what Colin mentioned about really focusing in on pure werewolf, that was an area that we felt, hey, we want to really reward you for staying in the werewolf form and really committing to that identity and just making sure that felt like an appropriate payoff, and this is one of the areas that we're doing that in. All right, so let's talk a little bit about one of the updated legendaries. So the aspect of the Blurred Beast. So this previously was a legendary that just caused your Shred to do some bonus damage to poison enemies.
신규
It was
스킬이네.
fine, but it wasn't too enticing. But now with the new update here, you actually still do more damage just all the time. And depending on how far you're traveling for Shred, you're going to do some bonus hits. And it looks so cool. Your werewolf is dashing across the screen and then just doing this like multi-hit kind of attack. And so if you're really close, you're just going to get maybe 1 additional strike. But if you're at this further distance, as you see in this clip, you're going to get the full 4 hits.
대시한
So it's really
다음에
about
4대 때리는 스킬.
positional gameplay a bit more than it was in the past, and you get very heavily rewarded for it when you do kind of execute that properly.
That's awesome.
And it's gonna be really great for movement, just moving around across the map, which I know movement is always a big thing that players really want. People have always been asking for, so it'll be cool to see people kind of just bouncing around as a druid with the aspect of the Blurred Beast. So very cool.
Yeah.
It's always great when we can inject changing how you play also, right? Because you can imagine launching into a group of enemies, then picking out specific targets that you really want to launch to, and that's how you optimize that build combat-wise.
Absolutely. This is one of my favorite ones in this patch, actually. Big fan of a lot of these Druid updates. Aspect of Wolf's Rain. So this is a combo kind of legendary, combining the powers of Hurricane and your Wolf companions. So when you cast Hurricane, all of your wolves actually spawn a little mini Hurricane of their own. And these will do bonus damage for each of your active wolves. So it really encourages these companion-based builds that already have this wolf pack of 5 wolves following them around. Now your Hurricane affects all of them, and they get bonus damage for how many you got. So you really want to be stacking up as many wolves as you can. They all get hurricanes, and you just get to shred through the whole screen with that.
That's super cool.
All right, moving on to Rogue. So this is one that Shadow Clone has been probably the Rogue skill that I would say it maybe wasn't quite hitting the mark compared to most other skills. And that was for a variety of reasons. And not to get too technical here on the details, but for a lot of the effects that that you have with your legendaries and your passives and those kind of things, historically Shadow Clone behaved inconsistently with those. It wouldn't necessarily pick up all of the bonuses, it wouldn't trigger all of the effects, and the end result was basically that your Shadow Clone dealt a whole lot less damage than you did. You thought, hey, I'm hitting for millions, and my Shadow Clone's hitting for like thousands, right?
Yeah.
And so we really looked at that comprehensively and thought, okay, we need to kind of rethink how Shadow Clone works across the board to really bring it up to par, to make it behave the way you expect, and then also extend that to a lot of the other summons in the game. The summons like your Necromancer skeletons, your Druid companions, and so on. So we did basically a rework of that entire system. And the long and short of it is that they should just work a whole lot better going forward in this season, where they're going to trigger all of your lucky hit effects. They're going to interact with all of your damage modifiers and multipliers that they previously were inconsistently working with. So just one example here, a very simple example. You've got Wind Striker's aspect. This is a very simple legendary that just says, hey, when you critically strike, gain some movement speed. Now in the past, that was only when your player character, critically struck with one of your skills. And it would not happen whenever one of your Druid companions or your Shadow Clone critically strikes. But now all of that will work. So your companions or your summons or your Shadow Clone critically strikes and you have Wind Strikers, now your character gets that bonus.
It's huge.
Yeah, I really can't overstate this, like how many new interactions and synergies this unlocks with not just Shadow Clone, but all of the summons in general across the game. But with Shadow Clone in particular, we've got a new unique item, and this one is Assassin's Stride. And the effect here works with mobility skills and your shadow imbuement. Once again, kind of playing up that combo aspect. So all of your mobility skills are going to always be shadow imbued with some bonus potency. So they're going to do some more damage. And whenever you damage an elite or boss with a mobility skill, there's a chance to trigger an instant free shadow imbuement explosion. So those of you who like playing Shadow Step builds, one of my favorite ones with Rogue, just like Adam had said before about jumping around the screen with werewolves, you can do that with Shadow Step now too. And you're just going to be getting a lot of those resets and kills much quicker as you leap out of the shadows, trigger a shadow imbuement explosion, and then move on to the next pack of enemies. Really cool, unique for that kind of build. Additionally, Caltrops, maybe the skill that was the most kind of clunky on the control-wise to use.
Thank God.
Seriously.
If you've ever tried to use Caltrops, it can be a struggle sometimes where your character